Welcome to Business Brains and the Bottom Line Podcast. I am your host today, Paul D'Allegro, and I have two guests today. I don't usually do two guests, usually one, but today we're changing it up a little bit. I have John Parker from Prescriptive Data Solutions and Lucas Broich from Cohesity. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here. Thank you.
So the topic of the show today, let me kind of level set for everyone out there. We're all in information technology. Right. So what that means to the people out there, everything in the data center, compute, storage, security, all the way from the desktop to the data center. And you two, I'm on the sales side, and you two guys are on the what we call the technical side, your SE, so sales engineers. So I think it's an important role because obviously this can only do so much, right? We need tech. I've often said you need strong technical folks to sell a solution. So John, we'll start with you. What is your perception of an SE? What do you think your role is, both pre and post sales?
Well, that's an excellent question. We spend a lot of time, on the pre-sales side, talking technology and listening to and understanding what our customers need from us, right? That's, I would say, as strong as our technical knowledge needs to be, our listening skills are more important than anything else because we're trying to understand what problems they're having and being able to present that back to them in a very useful, concise manner that they're going to get a lot of value from. And that drives a lot of the pre-sales. And then ultimately, with our success on the pre-sales side, we end up doing post-sales implementation. And if we're not successful in understanding what their initial problem was and identifying the right solution for them, then we can't deliver the end result that they're looking for. So that's a lot of what drives us on our side.
Cool. Well, so Lucas, so there's two different roles here. John works for a reseller, right? And we're kind of an agnostic consulting company that we sell a number of different solutions. You work for a manufacturer. How is your role at a company like Cohesity, configured, and how is that different than John?
Yeah, I think a big difference is that we try to do a lot of the same thing from a consultative perspective, but it ends up being a lot more myopic. You're trying to see things through how can we help the customer with our product versus
right.
A lot of times a VAR will come in and be able to take a more consultative approach. Now we do try to be as consultative as possible, but the customer also often expects us to be a bit focused on what we can offer. And so, exposing as much as you can of what the customer wants to solve, and then tying that back to your individual offering is most of what I do versus, from what I know from working with many VARs in the past and currently with you guys, coming in and understanding the problem and then understanding what vendor you might position first, right?
Sure.
It's a much more high level view, and then you drill down.
Sure. Well, that actually leads me to something I got my notes here. I was going to touch on that later, but I might as well cover it now. What happened? What do you do in a situation? We have, like us at a reseller, we have a lot of tools in our bag. So if solution A doesn't work, we can go to solution B. You've got really one solution. What do you do and how do you handle a situation where you've been called in and you say, hey, I don't think we're going to fit here, right? How do you handle that?
I think the biggest thing to do is be straight with the customer and be very clear initially. Say, I don't know that this is a good fit. This is what you're looking for. Confirm what I've heard is what they're really looking to do. And then if we do confirm that the project is indeed out of scope for what we can provide, being clear with them on either it's not a good fit or maybe it could be a good fit with certain caveats. Sure. And in a scenario where we're looking at option B, where it could work if they have certain areas where they're willing to compromise, then I find it builds a lot of trust quickly with the customer. If we say, these are the reasons this may not be a good fit, but if your focus is B, C, and D and not A, then this is still something we could pursue. And I've had really good luck with that. In a scenario where we're not going to meet any criteria, they've usually got a punch list of vendors they're talking to anyway.
Yeah.
And so, we don't have to necessarily, do we want to recommend a competitor? Do we want to refer them back to their VAR so they can make a recommendation, which works as well? It just kind of depends on the engagement model that we had with the customer.
Yeah, good. That's well said, Lucas, by the way. I couldn't agree with you more. I always said I always felt like if you take care of the customer's long-term needs, then your needs will be taken care of in the end as well. Because if you try to sell them something that's not going to fit, you're going to be found out eventually. And it's going to be 10 times worse, right?
Exactly. And as John said, during implementation, probably when you're going to figure that out. And, we'll probably talk about roles and responsibilities a little later, but especially when I was doing more implementation earlier on at Cohesity, I mean, you're right there. You're looking at the customer and you just talked to them 3 months earlier about how this would work and how this is a great fit. And now you never want to be in that spot.
You're scrambling. Yeah. But, Murphy's Law, I mean, not even Murphy's Law, but every once in a while something comes up that you never knew was going to come up. Right. And it just happens. Right. And it's how I always said, if you can belly up to the table, customers will appreciate that. Right. And make it right somehow, some way. John, you want to add anything onto that?
Absolutely. I completely agree that that the cohesion between the pre-sales and post-sales piece of it is very important. We have to be able to own up to it all the way through and being honest with them and upfront on what we can and can't deliver. That becomes a big challenge, especially when on the VAR side where we have to cover a lot of different technologies and our different groups and practices that we have are separated that way just because of our expertise. And sometimes we have to bring in other resources within our team or even outside of our team in order to deliver that full, complete solution for them. It's very important that we deliver an excellent product in the end in order for us to all be successful.
Yeah, cool. And, John, I was just thinking of this. You actually have somewhat of a unique role because you've worked at an OEM, kind of like Lucas, you've worked at a customer, so you're an end user at one point, and now you're working at a consulting company, Prescriptive Data Solutions. So I think you've got a good perspective of the industry as a whole. Which one do you like the most?
Well, for me, I like the consulting side mostly because of the flexibility that I have, and I'm able to help out in a lot of different ways. One of the things that was a challenge on the customer side was you're limited to your environment. So if you only are this big or this small, you can only do so much, right? You depending on the resource you have, the budget that's available to you, you can't always find the best solution or the best technical resources on your team to own and manage and run things. Whereas on the manufacturer side, the challenge is sometimes you only have one playbook you can operate off of, one technology that you're working with, and you may not always be the right fit for the customer. So as a consultant, I have the most fun, and it's honestly the most challenging too, because we can go in there and have a conversation about one technology, and it leads down a path of many different solutions that we can help provide, and we get to expand a lot deeper into the customer environment and help them out in a whole bunch of different ways.
Very nice. So I'll throw it back to you, Lucas. What do you like about the role? I mean, there's got to be things you like and don't like. So what's the fun part for you?
It's a good question. I think I like two aspects of it the most. I like showcasing the best of the product. So you have a prospect who's maybe never even heard of Cohesity or whoever the vendor is right before, and you come in and you're able to show this is what we're great at. This is where the product shines the best, and really get them hooked after that first call, right? That's a great feeling to know that you're going to have follow-up calls, conversations once we're done with this whole COVID thing. And, that's a big aspect of it for me. And then also listening to what they're trying to do and trying to elicit sort of an emotional response on their problems, right? Anybody can say, for Cohesity as an example, I need faster backups, I need more reliable backups, I need immutability for ransomware, things like that. But, when you get it to a point where a customer is talking about how this impacts them personally, it sort of changes the conversation, and you can really feel good about what you're proposing if it is indeed the right solution to help them with what they're trying to solve. So I think those are the two big ones for me.
Yeah, good points. What don't you like about it? The role?
I mean, it's a sales role, right? So you're kind of always working. So it's very difficult to take time off. I don't really take time off. But that's really it. I mean, it's Cohesity itself is a great company to work for. I worked for another OEM before Cohesity, and culture is really important at any company, I think. But we're a younger company, and so there's a lot of greater good trying to just do what you can to help our mission, right? And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming too when you're in a scenario where you're wearing a lot of hats. And it's, you can identify with customers that way. You have to do way more than you thought. Yeah, so do I. And so that can sometimes change as the OEM matures, and you have more segmentation.
Yeah. And I'm not just saying this because I have you on the show today, but I have heard a lot of good things about the Cohesity culture, by the way. I know a lot of people in your group and around Cohesity, and nothing but good things. I hear very few bad things about the environment there. So congratulations. It sounds like you get a great company. And we have Prescriptive too. It's one of the reasons I joined Prescriptive is, I know the owners very well, and it is a great culture. You work, you get things done, and you make money. Simple as that. Just a great, great culture. John, you want to add anything onto that too?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that really drew me to Prescriptive was I come from a kind of a service background. I like to help people and help my community. I served in the military, things like that. And one of the things that really drew me in was the fact that even though I'm in a sales role, the benefit is that I'm really here to help our customers out and being able to go in there and throwing off that sales stigma that typically comes with our role is that we're just there to help and do anything we can. And I really enjoy that. That's probably one of my favorite parts about the job. And what really drew me in is that I get to go in and help people any way that I can.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me into my next topic here is, what are the qualities that you think a good SE should have?
Well, that's an excellent question. I would say probably the number one is that service before self mentality. And we're out there to be in front of the customer and help them solve their problems. And it's a bigger kind of question around it, but you have to know your own limits, right? I mean, you can't go in there and lie or try to just win a deal or anything like that. We're there to help. And so knowing where your limits are on there is a big part of that service for self, because you need to know where you can go and help them get to, but also to know where to stop and where you got to go and get help from somebody else to bring in that final solution that they're looking for. So that's a big part to me is looking for people that have that kind of mindset, that are looking to help people out and put them first.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Lucas, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything John said, and I feel that there's extra emphasis specifically working for an OEM on not proposing your solution too quickly. Listening is a key part. Like he said, I think that's the biggest part of this role is listening to what the customer wants to do and not just coming in and doing a presentation before they've even said a word and said, here's our solution. What do you think? That might work in certain scenarios where they've already done their research and they know
how many do you want to buy?
Exactly. Yeah. Why wouldn't you want this?
Yeah.
But really what you need to do is listen and have, a meeting or two meetings before you even talk about your solution, right? And versus going in and just doing a PowerPoint or a quick demo with no context.
Sure. The old adage, when you work for an OEM and you have one product, it's like, you've got a hammer and everything looks like a nail and you're going to try to shoehorn that in. But I'll tell you, and I know you guys very well. That's why I'm saying this. You guys aren't wired that way. You're not going to sell something to a customer unless it's a good fit. And to kind of your point earlier, Lucas, like, hey, there may be a couple of caveats to make it work, but everything's out on the table.
Yep.
But there's one other thing I wanted to add to this, and John and I have had this conversation many times. I'm on the sales side. You guys are on the technical side. Both sales roles in a lot of ways. But the thing I always looked for in SC was soft skills. And I think, to me, in all the years I've been doing this, there's been a lot of smart SEs out there. But it's, to me, the best ones were the guys with great communication skills versus the real techie guys that are nerds. What are your thoughts on that? John, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I completely agree that it's a challenging transition, especially coming from the customer side, where I didn't have to really hone any of my soft skills. I just had to be that nerd knob guy that got, the problem solved and figured it out. Once I came over to, the manufacturer and then eventually the consulting side, I realized that the basic things of communication, whether it be eye contact or listening and being able to repeat what the customer said back to them, right? That's a really important thing to be able to do, because it helps them know that you comprehended what they were trying to say, what they're really asking for. So soft skills are very important, and some people have them, and some people have maybe they're weaker, right? Then they need
Sure.
to develop them more, and it takes time. We're currently working on that kind of within our organization, is helping our more junior engineers gain them, because they come from a technical background, they're solid on the technology, but they need to be in front of customers. And it's one of those things where you have to practice, right? And figure out what your comfort level is. Because not everybody that's technical can transition into that role. And it's okay, because everybody has a place. I mean, some people are just going to be on implementation side, not really doing selling. So.
Yep. No, completely agree. Lucas, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the soft skills are super important. I think in a scenario where you're paired with a true sales resource, an account executive, being an SE, I think it's even more important in a scenario where you want to sort of divide and conquer. And maybe you'll have the first call together, but then after that, you want to kind of do your own thing. And there's two things that it builds. One, you can cover a lot more ground that way if the AE feels comfortable just separating and not having to supervise every call because somebody's going to say something silly, right? But then the other thing is and kind of John said this earlier, you're in a scenario where you're more trusted than somebody who has the title of sales rep or something and talking about a problem they want to solve. And they think a lot of times that you're just going to position your product, because what else would you do? Right. And if you can build that trust to say, I'm maybe not going to propose something that won't work, it's a lot easier when you're well-spoken and you can make them feel heard, identify with what they're going through, things like that.
Yeah, no, good point. No, you actually touched on something, Lucas, that's near and dear to my heart, right? Is the sales SE relationship. So normally the way things are constructed at an OEM, and on our side a little bit too, but I have a lot of SEs, is for you, you're tied to one rep. And how important is that relationship with your rep?
Quite. That's your work wife or work husband or whatever you want to call them. And you got to have a good relationship or it's just going to go south, right? And I'm lucky because I am one-to-one. So I do work with one sales rep, and we share a territory and share an account list. A lot of SEs are kind of the opposite of what you're doing, is it's one SE and they work with a lot of reps, and they're having to just be engaged where it makes sense. So I'm pretty lucky in the fact that we're still one-to-one, at least in my spot.
And I'll give a shout out to your rep, Jared Cowgill. Great guy. He's been in the industry a long time, industry vet, just great to work with. So you're lucky. You have a good guy, and I think he's lucky to have you as well.
Well, appreciate that. Yeah, he's. I think the luck goes this direction more than that direction. But yeah, anyway, he's a great guy. Yeah, I like working with him. But I think that you really have to have that trust between your sales rep and the SE. You have to know how each other function best. When to hand off conversations, you get pretty good at just here's where he stops, here's where I start. But it's all about cohesion between the two.
Sure. Well, John, so in your role, you have a lot of reps that you have to interact with, right? Because we're at a VAR and we sell a million different products. And so what's your take on that?
Well, there are benefits to both ways of doing it. When you have a one-to-one relationship, which I've done in the past, you can build that cohesion and be able to really know each other really well to know how to deliver the right message or the right product in the end to the customer. When you have a lot more account reps that you're working with, you have to learn the ins and outs of each one of them, how they operate, what their personalities are like, and see how you fit, but also be able to show them how you operate, right? So they know how best to utilize you. So you can, like Lucas said, divide and conquer where you need to build that relationship out, not just between the rep and the technical resource, but also with the customer. Because what we found that's really beneficial for us is that our technical resources can become kind of like TAMs, technical account managers, where once the relationship with the customer has been established, then we can kind of leave the technical people embedded in the customer team, and they can become an extension of them. And then they bring in the sales rep when they're needed, to help further that relationship or help, break through those barriers where the sales reps are really good at, right? That's technical people aren't always good at breaking through that higher level, stuff that we have to deal with. Yep. And so the sales reps are very good at that.
Yeah, we try to be anyway. But so one of the things we do at Prescriptive is, and I know you guys at Cohesity do a lot of this stuff too, we don't just sell stuff, right? I mean, anyone can do that. You can go online and buy half the stuff we sell, right? But are you really going to get the technical knowledge, the implementation, the making sure everything's done correctly? And so that's where I think you guys really add a lot of value. And I know at Prescriptive, we do it. We're involved from inception all the way to implementation and post-sale. So we let our customers know that, hey, you can call us anytime. This is no like, hey, John and I sold you this, but guess what? There's been a new team coming in tomorrow that you don't even know, you've never met before, but guess what? They're good. I mean, customers want that warm and fuzzy feeling. So I'd like you guys to elaborate on that a little bit. Lucas, you want to start off with that?
Sure. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of good points there. I think that every VAR is different, and I think you guys in particular are very consultative, and you tend to be a trusted advisor within the customer versus some that are more in procurement and things like that. So I think that's important. I think this goes back to kind of the transition within the company I'm at now, Cohesity. From when I joined to now, we didn't have professional services when I joined, so it was all SE from pre to post, and
really?
Through implementation, through all of it. Yeah. So that was us doing all of that. We built out the PS team, and now I still am involved in the more, I don't want to say strategic, but sometimes larger, or where we have, another opportunity following on, right? You tend to be more involved in the post-sales process, even when you do have professional services.
Sure.
And I think, someone made a good point earlier about getting embedded in that customer team and bringing in the sales resource later. If you're involved in implementation, that's a great way to do that, right? Even if you're not the one leading the process, you've got a PM, you've got an implementation specialist there. If you're involved in answering questions, guiding the customer on best practices, you naturally become, at least for that business unit, you become an extension sort of the team if you do it right. They'll start looping you in on projects that don't have anything to do with what you were in there for initially.
Yeah, excellent point. John, you want to elaborate on that? Because that's a big one for me. I think becoming part of their team is kind of like my motto, right? We want to be like on a first name basis with everybody.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And we've done that really well with our accounts across all of our different account teams. And what we've done through that is they establish such a, and this is something we talked about before, being a trusted advisor. It's really what it is becoming part of their team. They call us about things that may not be what we've even talked about before. Like, hey, we had this random problem that came up. Can you jump in there and help us? And it's one of the things that I really love about what we do, where we already know the environment. We come in there and we can just take that phone call, get on a remote session, whatever it is, and help them out. And then not only that, but sometimes it leads into areas that are outside of our expertise. Like mine is network and security, but sometimes it leads into data center side, where we'll pull in other team members, and that helps them get embedded into the customer environment as well. And we can really expand from there, just become super helpful to them. And that's really all I care about is being that resource to them, so they can call in the middle of the night, like you said before. They can call us anytime, and we have this problem. Can you help us? And the answer is always yes. We'll jump in there and help you.
Yeah, I think yeah. In order to survive in this business, when customers have problems, they don't want to hear, "Geez, it's after hours."
There's definitely no after hours in IT. I mean, we're always working
24/7, and it's competitive out there, right? I mean, there's more companies than ours out there, and so a lot of times you're in accounts and you're competing for the business. Mm-hmm. We've got some accounts where we're the sole provider, which is great, but it's like every day is a new game. It's not what you did. What you did yesterday doesn't matter. Today's a new day, but I think over time you earn that trust, and if you do have a goof up, that covers some sins, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it buys you a lot of freedom within the customer. And we've actually, not that we've had a whole bunch of goof ups, but it does happen, right? Sometimes something's undersized, oversized, whatever it is, and you realize a mistake, and you own up to it. And that's where that coming back to being honest with the customer is very important. Like, we made a mistake, we're going to make it right. And that goes a long way with the customers every time.
Yep. All great points. Yeah. To add on to that about getting embedded with a customer, I think one of the things that we like to do at Prescriptive is we like to get on regular cadence calls with management, because I think that especially in big companies, if you're not communicating with the top level executives on goals and objectives, sometimes you can go left when you should have been going right. And I think it keeps everyone on the same straight and narrow path, and everyone's goals are aligned correctly. I mean, thoughts on that, Lucas?
Yeah, I think, and this kind of goes back to the relationship between SC and sales as well, right? We're going to be pretty involved with the implementation guys, right? The guys running it day to day, and then you have your rep sometimes who's more involved with VP level, C level maybe, and making sure that the priorities align, because there's within customers there's a lot of miscommunication internally. I mean,
that
you
is
level
so true.
says,
Different division, different groups. I couldn't agree with you more.
Exactly. So, you've got one message coming down from the top. How do we make this happen? And you can make sure that you're helping them stay in line with what their C levels or VPs are wanting to see. And, customers can see that as helpful too, because they don't always have the same access, right? They're going through multiple levels of management. So
I want to shift to a kind of a different subject now. Prospecting. So what's your take on prospecting? This is a very sensitive subject for sales guys. So prospecting seems to always be pointed at the sales guy. One of my contention is we're all sales guys, right? When you work for a company, everyone's in sales. So I'll start with you, Lucas. What's your thought on prospecting? Because I know at a manufacturer, you guys are hammered on this stuff, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different definitions of prospecting, I think.
Yep. Agreed.
You can go from anything from cold calling to brand awareness. And I think that SEs can play a big role, maybe not in the actual cold calling piece, because my personal opinion is if you do start to help out with that aspect of it, sometimes it maybe hurts your trusted advisor aspect a little bit once the customer, you have a conversation going, you're the guy that reached out 3 times before I sent you something back. Maybe you're not the one to actually solve my problem, just because of how things, but I think, user groups leading those types of interactions, any one-to-many sort of engagement.
Sure. Getting your name out there.
Sure.
Right.
And
getting
I think,
your name
doesn't have to be one-on-one to be prospecting. And that brand awareness is something huge, where you're almost working more with marketing than you are with individuals.
Sure. So. And I think prospecting has changed over the last 20 years, right? I think back in the old days, it was, here's a list of people to call. You got to make 100 calls, and that doesn't work. We both know that. So it's kind of like you saying, social media, this podcast, hopefully, so LinkedIn, all the different social media networks out there that can help get your message out there and target the right people. John, what's your take? Excuse me.
Absolutely. Well, on prospecting, I mean, really for us, it's challenging, mostly from a technical perspective, because again, we want to try to establish that trusting relationship with the customer. And if we go in seeming too salesy, it just like Lucas says, it kind of can slowly muddy the waters. I mean, really, it's kind of hard to do that. But in the end result, once we're put in front of somebody and we're able to show our technical expertise and our really relatable field experience or within the technology or solution stack that they're trying to accomplish, that kind of just goes away, right? And it doesn't even feel like prospecting anymore, because really we're just listening to them or really on the other side of it, talking to them about what we have expertise in and trying to see what fits, right? To see if we can build a relationship from there. Because the end result is just try to build that relationship overall. And everything comes after that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, John. Anything else you guys want to talk about? Anything I missed? I have my notes here that, we discussed we're going to talk about. Excuse me. Anything you guys would like to talk about? John, we'll start with you. Anything additional?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things that that's come across a lot on our side is growth and security. Just in the technology and how evolving it is. Being that I'm the network and security practice manager, I spend a lot of time on networking. Right, it's where I grew up on and came up on. Right, and but security is just at the forefront of everybody's minds. And the biggest challenge that we've run into is staying on top of the solutions that are out there. It's just constantly evolving and the threats that are out there. And that's been one of our biggest challenges around resources from a technical perspective is how do we keep our engineers and architects up to date on all these things? I mean, it's constantly evolving. How do we stay in front of that, right? To help be beneficial to the customer in the end. And our biggest challenge out of that is finding people with the knowledge, right?
Right.
We have a lot of lot of background on a lot of different technologies, but in the end, we've still got to evolve and learn new things. And probably that evolution is what's driving a lot of our business, right? As we get pulled into conversations and talking about, why we're doing this in the security space, or why is this important? And then, well, we bring in real world examples, right? After that, like, this is what's happening to other people that are in the same vertical as you. And that's it's a lot of fun, but it's very, very challenging to stay on top of all of those things. And so I think it's definitely one of the things that I like about Cohesity is that out of all the things that they do, one of the things that Lucas brought up was that, ransomware, right? It's across all different parts of solutions, right, where it's being affected, and so we're seeing the security stuff pop up in every solution that's out there, even though it may have come across the board originally as some other technology to do visibility or optimization or whatever. They're embedding security solutions inside of everything. So I'm very excited about that technology and where that space is going.
Yeah, and you touched on a really good point, John. I mean, you can't know everything, right? It's so hard. There's so many solutions out there, and we have our pet few, but man, it's hard to stay ahead of the curve for sure.
Absolutely.
Lucas, anything on your anything else from you? Anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to discuss? Any pearls of wisdom for the fans out there?
I think I don't know about wisdom. I do think that another important aspect of this role that we haven't necessarily touched on, or maybe we have, just not directly, is knowing when you don't know something and being very clear that I need to get back to you. I don't know the answer to that, because that's a really great way to lose that trust, is trying to talk about something that you don't know about and giving an answer that's wrong, right? So I think, and it's hard for people in this type of role to say, I don't know. You always want to have the answer and be the guy with all the answers and all that. And it's just it's not good.
Yeah, no, excellent point, Lucas. Because like you said, you lose credibility with a customer if you give some answer that is half true. But I think that comes with experience, though, too. In my experience, it's the senior guys that have confidence in themselves, know what they know. They very confidently say, "Hey, I'm not sure about that one. Let me look into that, and I'll get back to you." I think that's acceptable.
Yeah, and I think it's very challenging, especially being at an OEM. You should know your product, and so you don't want to be asking for help all the time. But it's still, if you need it, you need to know when to ask. And it's nice if you cover a lot of products. You're not like you said, you're not expected to know everything. And if you have the answers to everything, either you're more amazing than everybody else, or there's something else going on there, right? So,
I think John Parker knows everything about everything, but I'm just maybe I'm naive. I don't know.
I try, but I know my own limits, and that's.
So I think that you really got me thinking of it. So I think that's one thing we do at Prescriptive is we know our strengths, we know our weaknesses, and we tell customers, look, we don't have someone on the bench that specializes in that technology, but we'll find someone for you. So we tend to have relationships with other vendors out there to augment our staff, to say, hey, let's come in, go team up. We don't do what you do. You don't do what we do. Let's partner up on this. And the net, we still help the customer. Right. And that's the bottom line. Right.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that, John?
Oh, absolutely. And that's, you hit it. That's the bottom line. That's what we want to do, is we want to be there to help the customer. And if that means that we have to go outside of our organization and partner with somebody else, but the end result is that we're helping them.
Yeah, that's the name of the game. So, well, any parting shots before we sign off, guys? Anything you'd like to say, John, to your fans out there? I mean, I know you got a big fan club out there, so I don't know.
Well, thank you, Paul, for having me on. And this has been an excellent first podcast experience for me. And so hopefully I can come back again.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure we could have a number of different, if we want to get more into one solution type thing, that's when I think we could have you back on to really dig deep into the security role. But really the purpose today was talk about the role of the SE, right? I think it's an important role because I've always said, I give you guys all the credit. Without a good SE, a sales guy doesn't sell anything. It's just the truth, Lucas, and any parting shots from your side?
No, as John said, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been a blast. Had a good time talking to both of you. And I think there was some good conversation, and looking forward to the next one.
All right. Well, Lucas, thanks. Looking forward to doing we've got some stuff going on between our companies. So looking forward to a continued growth in our business.
Absolutely. Yep. Looking forward to it. Should be a good 2022.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, guys. And again, this is Paul Delegro signing off from Business Brains and the Bottom Line. Until next time.